This is the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Luke 23, verses 33 and 34 recounts, when they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him and the criminals there, one on his right, the other on his left. Then Jesus said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. At the very moment of his body being tortured to the utmost extremity, Jesus somehow musters the strength to speak. And what does he say? Father, forgive. Offering forgiveness to another is always remarkable, but most notably so when it's done in the face of grave injustice by those who otherwise seem unrepentant. And Jesus' example, of course, was taken up by the likes of everyone from St. Stephen, the first martyr, to St. John Paul II himself, amongst many others. But forgiving another person is far from automatic. It takes intentionality, strength of will, and an all-out dedication to love. Yet it is so fundamental to the Christian life that Jesus hinged our reception of mercy and forgiveness directly to the measure with which we offer mercy and forgiveness. So, how do you become a person of deep forgiveness, to forgive as Jesus forgives? Forgiveness is our topic on The Inner Life today, and back with us to guide our discussion is Father Eric Nielsen. Father Eric is the administrator of 4 parishes of Janesville, Wisconsin, in the Diocese of Madison. Welcome back to the program, Father. Good to be with you.
Hello, Patrick. Yes, I'm very happy to be here today.
What are we learning about forgiveness when Jesus, in this dire moment, cries out for forgiveness for his executioners?
Yeah, so what we learned from that, first you just bring up a thing, loving your enemies. You can always say, test how much you love by, think of the person that's your greatest enemy and how well do you love that person? Oof. Because that's the test of how deep your love is. Can you love that person who is your biggest enemy? What we learned from our Lord Jesus is that, it's like, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. Well, they know exactly what they're doing. They're nailing a guy to the cross, but they don't know the depth of what they're doing. They don't know the evil of what they're doing. And so we have to do that same thing with people that are hurting us. Yeah, they know they're hurting us. They might be hurting us on purpose. Exactly the way those guys, crucifying Jesus, those Romans were trained to hurt that person. Those Roman soldiers weren't just like, okay, this is our job. They were actually trained to make that as miserable as possible for a condemned prisoner. And so they were torturing him on purpose. But they didn't know why that was so evil. They didn't know the extent of that evil. And they didn't know the dignity of the person they were doing that to. The first thing we can learn from Jesus is to look beyond the superficial intention of what this person is doing. Realize, they don't know what they're doing. They don't realize how much they're hurting their soul by hurting me. They don't realize my dignity as a child of God. They don't realize how much God looks down on what they're doing. They just don't have any realization of that. And so, Father, forgive them, because if they really knew what they're doing, they wouldn't do it. And so we can learn that from our Lord right there. And I think, secondly, while we're speaking, is that since the only path to heaven is through Jesus Christ, and the only path to heaven then is through the cross of our Lord, we believe that as Catholics. Yeah. And therefore, we are going to experience that. We are going to experience in life people that we have to forgive that have hurt us. We all have to have that experience. And our Lord's going to make sure of it that we experience that one way or the other. And so none of us should be shocked that there are people in our life that have hurt us that we have to forgive. That's the human experience.
Yeah. Father, what would you say is the connection between receiving the Lord's forgiveness and then being able then in turn to offer forgiveness to others?
Well, there's that great story of the unmerciful steward, where our Lord Jesus, he tells a parable of a man that owed a huge debt to the owner of the estate there, and he begs forgiveness, and the guy writes off all the debt. And then he comes and he finds another man that owed him a much smaller amount and throttles him and throws him into prison until he pays the debt off. And when the fellow servants hear about this, they get upset, and they go back to the owner of the estate and say, look, this is what this guy is doing now. And he calls them in and says, how dare you? I released your entire debt, and you wouldn't even forgive the smaller person. When we think of the sins that we've committed against our Lord Jesus, who gave us this beautiful world, and not only did he give us this beautiful world, but he created you, he made you, and he gave you an intellect and he gave you free will. And he gave you that intellect and that free will in order that you may contemplate beauty and do good. And how often have you misused that great gift that our Lord God has given you? Yet he forgives you that. I mean, you go in it's amazing. We go into the confessional, and with kind of a half contrite heart, we say we're sorry for these sins. And, and usually the priest gives us this amazingly heavily penance of like 3 Hail Marys or something like that,
Yeah.
And, and boom, we're done. We're completely forgiven. Yet we just call to task other people just in such a brutal manner, the things that they offend us in very little ways. And what did we give these other people compared to what God has given us? There's the connection.